The convent bells rang at dawn, echoing across the stone courtyard, where silence was meant to cradle the sisters into prayer. Elena knelt among them, her lips moving, her heart elsewhere. At 32, her body obeyed the ritual, but her soul ached with questions she dared not speak aloud. Faith once felt like air. Now it pressed against her like a burden. She kept her doubts locked away, concealed behind the gentle smile the Mother Superior praised. Yet in the still hours of night, when the chapel candles flickered and the world seemed to hold its breath, her chest tightened with emptiness. God's presence no longer filled the void. It was during one of those evenings that Daniel appeared, his presence disruptive, his charm disarming. He arrived at the convent gates not as a pilgrim, but as a benefactor, a man whose donations brought new life to the crumbling walls. His voice carried warmth, his words laced with humor that felt dangerously human. He bowed politely, but his gaze lingered too long. "Elena," he said softly, when she guided him through the gardens, "your hands look tired from work that should not belong to such delicate fingers." She should have looked away. Instead, heat rushed to her face, and she laughed, a sound she had not heard from herself in years. Their exchanges began innocently, brief words after Mass, questions about scripture, laughter in the cloistered gardens, where roses bloomed defiantly against the cold. But innocence soon shifted into secrecy. She began waiting for him, her prayers rushed, her eyes restless at the sound of approaching footsteps. The first time his hand brushed hers, it felt like a shock, a breaking of glass within her. He didn't apologize. He only smiled, as if they shared a truth too great for words. Guilt clawed at her when she lay in her cell at night, staring at the crucifix above her bed. She whispered for forgiveness, but when morning came, she found herself longing again for the sound of his voice. One afternoon, the Mother Superior warned her in measured tones. "Sister Elena, beware the temptations of the world. A man's kindness is not always God's kindness." Elena nodded, lowering her gaze, but her heart rebelled. The warnings only fueled the secret flame. Daniel's confessions grew bolder. "My marriage is a cage," he admitted, his eyes searching hers. "You are the first light I've seen in years." Her pulse thundered at his words. She wanted to remind him of her vows, the sacred promises she once thought unbreakable. Instead, she found herself whispering, "And what of my vows? What of God?" He leaned closer, his breath warm. "Perhaps God sent me to remind you of your humanity." The words were poison and salvation at once. In the garden shadows, with the scent of roses thick around them, she let the silence between them become an answer. When she finally kissed him, trembling and defiant, the vow she had carried since girlhood shattered, the echo of it followed her long after, a weight she could neither confess nor deny. And as the bells tolled once more, calling her back to the altar, she realized she had already chosen a path no prayer could undo. One that would lead her far beyond the convent walls, toward Cairo and into the hands of destiny. The decision came quietly, like water slipping through cracks. Elena packed no habit, no crucifix, only a plain dress and the trembling conviction that she was choosing love over chains. The convent gates closed behind her with no farewell, only the cold echo of bells that rang for others, not for her. Daniel waited near the train station, his posture confident, his smile a shield against the doubt gnawing inside her. "From Rome to Cairo," he whispered, pressing her hand. "No one needs to know the journey but us." The flight blurred into fragments, his hand steady on hers, the roar of engines, her heart hammering with both terror and thrill. She told herself this was not betrayal, but rebirth, that vows could be rewritten if love demanded it. Cairo struck her like a storm. The air was dense with dust and spice, the streets alive with a chaos that felt worlds away from her quiet convent. Vendors shouted in languages she barely understood, children darted between cars, and the minarets reached higher than the church steeple she once prayed beneath. "This is our sanctuary," Daniel said, leading her into a furnished flat near the Nile. It smelled of polished wood and faint cologne. Everything seemed temporary, yet he assured her it was theirs. He kissed her forehead, whispered of freedom, and she clung to his promises as if they were scripture. But the city did not soften for her. The nights were filled with strange sounds, the calls of prayer, the hum of traffic, the arguments from neighbors she never saw. Daniel left often claiming business meetings, leaving her adrift in unfamiliar streets. She wandered markets with her shawl pulled tight, wondering if people could see the sin on her face. When she asked about his absences, he brushed her cheek with his thumb. "I have to keep things hidden," he murmured. "People wouldn't understand what we have. But soon I'll make it right. For us." His words were honey, but shadows stretched behind them. The phone calls he took in hushed tones, the locked drawer in the bedroom, the scent of unfamiliar perfume that clung faintly to his shirt. Each detail cut into her certainty. One night, unable to sleep, she opened the Bible she had carried secretly in her bag. The pages trembled beneath her fingers. She tried to pray, but instead of peace, she felt the gnaw of doubt. "Have I abandoned you, or have you abandoned me?" she whispered into the dark. No answer came. Daniel returned past midnight, his tie loosened, his face weary. She asked again where he had been. His smile faltered, then returned sharper. "Elena, do you not trust me?" The question lodged in her throat. Trust was all she had left, yet it slipped like sand through her fingers. She lay awake beside him, watching the ceiling, knowing something waited in Cairo, something more than love, more than betrayal, something that would test not only her faith, but her survival. The first sign came on an afternoon heavy with Cairo's heat. Elena had gone to the market, clutching a basket, her eyes lowered to avoid stares that seemed to pierce her foreignness. When she returned to the flat, the air was thick with silence. A silk scarf, unfamiliar and perfumed, lay draped across the arm of the sofa. Her heart lurched. It wasn't hers. Daniel entered moments later, his jacket over one arm, his smile too quick. "You're early," he said, brushing past her. He snatched the scarf, folding it with practiced hands, and shoved it into the drawer he always locked. Elena's voice trembled. "Whose is it?" He kissed her forehead, ignoring the question. "Business associates. A mistake. Don't burden yourself." But the lie clung like smoke. Days later, she found her answer. It was evening when she heard a knock on the door. Daniel was gone. Elena hesitated, then opened it. A woman stood there, her presence commanding, her eyes sharp as glass. She wore a dark abaya, her posture unyielding. "You must be Elena," the woman said, her Italian accented but firm. Elena froze, gripping the doorframe. "Who are you?" The woman's lips curved into something between pity and scorn. "His wife." The words struck like a blade. Elena stumbled back, but the woman stepped inside without invitation, her heels clicking against the tiled floor. "He told me you were naive," the wife continued, scanning the apartment with disdain. "But I didn't think you'd be this foolish." Elena's throat closed, he said. "He said your marriage was broken." The wife laughed, bitter and low. "Broken? He has said that to many women. You think you're special? You're only one more sin in a collection he hides." Elena's chest burned with humiliation. She wanted to deny it, to insist she knew Daniel's heart. Yet the scarf, the late nights, the silences, every piece betrayed her. Tears threatened, but anger rose sharper. "Why come here? To humiliate me?" The wife leaned close, her perfume suffocating. "To warn you, leave him, or you'll regret staying. He uses love like a weapon. You'll lose more than vows." The door slammed as she left, her words echoing louder than the city beyond. When Daniel returned, Elena confronted him. "She came. Your wife. She knows." His jaw tightened. "You shouldn't have spoken to her." "You lied," she whispered, "about everything." He stepped closer, his tone soft but edged with steel. "I lied because the truth would have scared you away. I need you, Elena. You're not like the others. You're mine." Her pulse raced, torn between fear and longing. His hands gripped her shoulders with a force that felt both desperate and possessive. "Don't let her poison you," he murmured. "She wants to trap me in a loveless cage. But with you I can breathe." She closed her eyes, wanting to believe, yet the wife's warning gnawed at her bones. That night, Elena lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow circles above. Daniel slept beside her, his hand heavy across her waist. She felt the weight of chains, not of her vows to God, but of this man's control. The convent's silence haunted her. Once, she belonged to God. Now she belonged to a secret, and deep inside, fear whispered. The wife was not an enemy. She might have been the only truth Elena had left. The days after the wife's visit bled into a haze of guilt and desperate hope. Elena tried to leave once. She packed a small bag, clutching her Bible as if it might guide her back to safety. But when Daniel found her at the door, his expression was not rage, but wounded grief. "Don't punish me," he whispered, his voice trembling as he took her hand. "Without you I am nothing." Her resolve crumbled. She dropped the bag, tears streaming, and let him draw her back inside. It became a pattern. Each time doubt clawed at her, Daniel bound her with new promises. He spoke of divorcing his wife, of starting fresh where no one knew them. He painted images of seaside houses, of children laughing, of a love pure enough to erase the sin. Yet behind his words lay demands. "Elena," he said one evening, placing a form in front of her, "you're trusted by the convent. I need these documents. Just copies, financial things I can't request openly." Her stomach twisted. "I can't. It's dishonest." His eyes darkened. "Dishonest? Do you think love survives without sacrifice? Haven't I given you everything? Do this, and we'll be free." Her hand shook as she signed, the ink bleeding into her conscience. The money followed. Small requests at first, rent, debts, business delays, each plea wrapped in the language of need. When she hesitated, he kissed her hands, knelt at her feet, whispered, "Don't you see, you are my salvation." She wanted to believe. She had abandoned her God, her sisters, her vows. If Daniel's love was not truth, then she had nothing left. Her journal became her only confessor. In its pages, she poured prayers twisted with longing. "Lord, if this love is wrong, why does it feel like fire in my veins?" But even fire consumes. She noticed him slipping further away. His late nights grew later, his absences longer. Sometimes his return was clouded by alcohol, his tenderness replaced by sharp impatience. "You doubt me again," he snapped once, slamming a glass onto the counter. "After all I've risked, after all you've given up." "I gave up everything," she whispered. His silence was worse than anger. And yet, when dawn came, he would cradle her face, murmur apologies, and speak of futures where all of this pain was only the prelude to joy. Her faith in him was no longer devotion, it was captivity. She prayed not to God but to Daniel, begging for love, for validation, for proof that her sacrifice was not in vain. But shadows stretched longer in Cairo. In every quiet moment she felt the wife's warning return like a ghost. "You'll lose more than vows." At night she clutched her Bible close, its leather worn by restless hands. Its words once guided her soul. Now they stared back, silent, accusing. And still she stayed. Because leaving Daniel no longer felt like freedom. It felt like death. The Cairo summer pressed down like a fist. Elena felt it in her lungs, in her skin, in the exhaustion that never left her. Daniel grew more distant, his promises thinner, his temper sharper. She searched his eyes for the man who once whispered salvation, but found only shadows. One evening, she followed him. His lies had become too brittle. She trailed behind through the crowded alleys, her shawl pulled tight. He walked swiftly, checking his phone, unaware of her gaze. At a cafe near the outskirts, he met a man with cold eyes and quick movements. Money exchanged hands. The sight chilled her more than confession ever could. When Daniel returned that night, she asked nothing. Silence was safer, but fear seeped into her prayers. Days later, he suggested a trip. "Just us," he said, forcing a smile, away from the noise. "The desert clears the soul." Her instinct screamed no, but his hand enclosed hers, warm and insistent. "You trust me?" She nodded, though her throat burned with doubt. The desert stretched endless and merciless, its dunes glowing under a dying sun. Daniel drove in silence, the city vanishing behind them. Elena pressed her Bible to her chest, as if its weight could anchor her to safety. At dusk, he stopped the car near a barren stretch. The wind howled, carrying grains of sand that stung her skin. "Why here?" she whispered. His expression was unreadable. "Because some things can only be spoken where no one listens." She shivered. The horizon felt like a grave. Later, witnesses recalled seeing a woman matching Elena's description near the desert's edge, her shawl whipping in the wind, her figure trembling beside a tall man. Then, nothing. Daniel returned to Cairo alone. When asked, he told neighbors Elena had grown restless and boarded a flight to Italy. But no airline held her name. No convent welcomed her back. Her family received no letters, no calls. Weeks passed. Whispers spread through the streets of a foreign woman abandoned, of a lover discarded, of secrets buried under endless sand. Then, in a crowded marketplace, a stall owner laid out a worn leather Bible. Its margins carried notes in Italian, shaky handwriting spilling prayers of longing and guilt. Inside the front cover was her name, Sorella Elena. It was the only trace left of her existence. The authorities questioned Daniel, but his charm was unshaken. "She left me," he insisted, his eyes rehearsed, his tone steady. His wife denied all knowledge, her face a mask carved from stone, and the Bible passed from one hand to another, a relic of a vanished soul, while Elena's fate dissolved into silence, claimed either by betrayal, by desert, or by death. The Bible passed from the marketplace into police custody, its pages stained by sweat, its cover worn by desperate fingers. Investigators traced the name inside, but the convent in Italy offered only silence. "Sister Elena left us months ago," the Mother Superior wrote. "She was not ours to keep." Daniel's story remained steady. To every question, he answered with the same calm insistence. She left. She returned to Italy. She was unhappy. His hands never trembled. His eyes never shifted. To the neighbors he spoke with grief carefully measured. Sorrow practiced but never raw. Yet, fragments surfaced. A taxi driver swore he drove Daniel and a woman to the edge of the desert one evening, but he could not swear she was Elena. A street vendor insisted he sold water to a pale, frightened woman who clutched a Bible to her chest. None of it formed proof. His wife stood firm, her dignity intact. "This woman was his mistake," she said coldly. "But I know nothing of her disappearance." The police recorded her words, but suspicion lingered in the shadows of her silence. Elena's journal, found tucked in the Bible, revealed a soul unraveling. The entries began with longing, then blurred into fear. "I cannot breathe when he is away. I do not know if I am saved or damned. Perhaps both." The final pages were more frantic, the ink smeared as if written with trembling hands. "The desert waits. I hear it in my dreams. If love is a lie, let death be my truth." The case faltered. Authorities weighed testimony against absence, suspicion against charm. Without a body, there was no crime. Without a crime, there was no justice. The Bible became the only witness. Its margins held confessions too intimate for courtrooms, too fragile for evidence. And so Elena's story dissolved into Cairo's dust, carried away by whispers in cafes and sermons in hushed churches. Some called her a runaway, some a martyr of love, others a fool who mistook lust for salvation. But the Bible remained, and in its pages, Elena's voice endured, even as her body was lost to sand or sin. Time moved forward, indifferent. Daniel prospered, his business unshaken, his marriage intact. His wife walked beside him at public gatherings, her eyes revealing nothing. The convent rarely spoke of Elena, except in quiet warnings to young sisters. Temptation is patient, and sin often wears the face of love. Her family lit candles each Sunday, praying for a daughter whose name became a wound, never closing. Letters to authorities returned unanswered. Hope turned brittle, then silent. And yet in Cairo, a single Bible endured. Its spine cracked, its pages fragile. It bore the last testimony of a woman who had chosen passion over vows, devotion over truth. No courtroom judged Daniel. No grave bore Elena's name. The desert swallowed her, whether in body or in myth. but the cost of her choice echoed louder than justice, a reminder that faith can fracture, love can consume, and betrayal can erase a life until only silence and scripture remain. In the end, Elena's story was not one of salvation, but of surrender to a man, to a dream, to a lie. And all that remained was the book she once held against her heart, its words of God now forever entwined with the memory of her fall.